Welcome to Stroke Forward. My name is Marcia Moran. For the next 40 minutes or so, we are going to talk about things that stroke survivors or any brain injury survivor deals with. If you look at me today, you probably don't see a person who had a stroke, but I feel it. My body functions differently. Do I think I will get back to 100%? Yes, because to think differently is to admit defeat. We will talk to all sorts of people who have been there, from survivors to caretakers to doctors, nurses, therapists, friends, and family who have seen us at our weakest. They have cheered us with their victories, no matter how large or how small. How did we get here? That's what this show is going to tell you. Mark Kola has been with Neurorestorative Pennsylvania for over 20 years. Currently, Mark is one of Neurorestorative's clinical evaluators and travels the greater Delaware Valley area, sharing information about their program, assessing the clinical and functional needs of people who have been referred to Neurorestorative, and overseeing cognitive rehabilitation services. He is also part of the clinical team that is responsible for assessing individuals in need of residential rehabilitation services at their Fairview program in Erie, Pennsylvania. He is collaborator on the BIAPA Conference Committee and is an integral participant with the TBI Advisory Board, RCPA Brain Injury Committee, and the MLTSS Submac committees in Harrisburg. Mark is also a vital member of Neurorestorative's Veterans Program to serve wounded veterans in need of services, and helped develop Neurorestorative's MS program as well. Mark is a member of the Society for Cognitive Rehabilitation, a certified brain injury specialist, and a certified dementia practitioner. I'm delighted to introduce Mark Kola. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good, Marcia. How are you doing today?
I'm just fine, thank you. So you spent your life helping other people with brain injuries. What got you interested in this type of work?
So it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. It's a family business. My oldest sister, who is 17 years older than me, started a program here in Pennsylvania called Mainline Rehabilitation Associates back in the 80s, and she was a heavy influence on my life. So I ultimately went to work for her when I was in my late 20s, and this August will be my 23rd year working for this program, which is now called Neurorestorative Pennsylvania.
Okay. So that's really interesting that your sister had that business. So I looked online at what they had to say, and it's a fantastic website.
I'm glad that you were able to find us, and we think that the work that we're doing is very important here in Pennsylvania. Obviously, Neurorestorative is a national program in multiple states, but here in Pennsylvania, we've been around in one shape or form for over 35 years, working with individuals with brain injuries and other neurological diagnoses. Okay, so you are a clinical evaluator for Neurorestorative. In layman's terms, what does that really mean? So I really have two primary functions. So I spend most of my time as kind of the entry point to all referrals coming in for the entire state. So anyone looking for Neurorestorative Pennsylvania services typically go through me first. I'm talking to folks about our various services, as well as answering any questions that they may have about what we can help their loved ones with. I also talk about funding options here in the state. So I would say the majority of my time is spent just helping incoming referrals find the help that they need. The other important role that I have is outreach, really just getting out there and spreading the word about our program, letting them know about cognitive rehabilitation therapy, letting them know about our structured day programs that we have here, letting them know about our residential program out in Erie, Pennsylvania. So, I meet with hospital groups, rehab programs, Obviously I met you at the BIAPA conference, so I'm out working at those type of events just to spread the word about what we do and how we can help folks that have cognitive issues and other neurological problems.
Okay, so you talk about cognitive issues. What type of issues are they?
So there's a lot of different cognitive issues that we could potentially work on. I think it's easier to take a step back and just let you know that about 50% of our population are individuals with brain injuries, but we also work with folks with other neurological issues like multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, stroke, autism. And we're typically working on areas of cognition like memory, decision-making, problem-solving, thought flexibility, impulse control, social appropriateness, improving communication, attention, organizational skills. A lot of those executive functioning areas that may be affected by a neurological diagnosis or, someone that experiences cognitive deficits.
Okay.
So from the cognitive rehab therapy standpoint, our core philosophy is that the service should be delivered in someone's natural environment. So that's what makes us a little unique compared to some of the other in and outpatient programs here in the state. We go out and work with folks right in their home, as well as go out into the community where they are spending their time and really focusing on real life impact and how we can help them maintain their independence, both home and when they go out into the community.
That's really special. Yeah. So how many people are you treating now?
So I don't know the exact number, but I would say on any given, month, it's somewhere in the 250 to 275 range.
Wow.
I think at our pre-COVID year levels, we were probably around 300. That would be probably at the top of where we were, 300 with 100 staff spread throughout the state. We're in all of southeastern Pennsylvania, in central PA, as well as western PA. And then, like I said, we have a residential program up in Fairview, which is right outside of Erie. And we also provide the cognitive rehab up in Erie as well. So if you're looking at the state of Pennsylvania, we're basically in the east, the west, and the central part of the state.
So does that mean you don't go far north?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a handful of counties that we just cannot provide services for because they may be too rural. But what I would be excited to say about that is one of the very few positive things that came out of COVID was the development of a pretty comprehensive Tele Rehab model that we now have. So our funding sources that we use here in the state recognize that a lot of the participants did not feel comfortable with us coming into their homes during the height of the pandemic. So we were allowed through our funders to do Tele Rehab or telehealth. And we developed a pretty comprehensive program for this. And it stretches now further than just COVID, because we're back to pretty much providing services in the home when we can. But it's also allowed us to branch out into areas of Pennsylvania where we haven't historically had staff. So with the implementation of telehealth, we've been able to work with folks that may be in a rural setting that it could be difficult for them to find services or supports for.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So tell me about becoming a certified brain injury specialist.
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question with, because I know that over the years, the ACBIS, which is the group that runs the certification, has changed its testing techniques. I have been a certified brain injury specialist for well over 10 years. And when I originally became a CBIS, it was about a 40 or 50 page book that had about 6 different chapters in it. And it was basically a combination of passing a test as well as just having hours out in the field. So
Okay.
now the hours are still there, but the test is way more comprehensive. So what we do, what I think the easiest way to answer it is that when we bring in a new therapist to provide this service, they have to have a certain number of hours that they've been out in the field working directly with a participant with. Once they get those number of hours, they can start going through the certification process, which is, you know, taking the test, which is pretty comprehensive at this point.
Okay.
So, you know, all of our therapists are either certified brain injury specialists, they are working towards becoming a certified brain injury specialist by getting their hours, or the case is being managed by a clinical coordinator that is a certified brain injury specialist until the therapist can pass that test.
How long do you think it takes to get enough hours to pass a test like this?
So organizationally for us, it's usually about 6 months.
Okay.
But I
Interesting.
think that that can vary depending on the number of hours you're working each week. So we have part-time therapists that may only be doing 6 hours a week with individuals, and we may have a full-time therapist that's doing 40 hours. So obviously you're going to get to your needed hours much quicker, you know, if you're full-time and working more hours than someone that might not be working as much.
Right. So I actually hadn't heard about a certified brain injury specialist until I got your bio.
That's
So,
interesting. It's funny here in the state, anyone I feel that is involved with brain injury, especially at the other residential programs, including ours, you're going to typically see CBIS next to them.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it's run through a group called ACBIS, and
Okay.
you know, they have certified brain injury specialist trainers that help train staff. And it's my understanding that most programs will have a trainer within their program that can help train their staff and help them kind of get through the process.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
very important though. I think it just like being accredited in this industry, you know, you really should have staff be certified brain injury specialists when possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So, what does a certified dementia practitioner do?
I mean, it depends. I went through the testing for that about 5 years ago
Mm-hmm.
because there was a major push to serve the aging population. Just to give you a little bit of background, here in the state of Pennsylvania for years and years and years, we had a primary funding source called it was a Medicaid waiver.
Mm-hmm.
And there were various waivers that would help pay for services if you had medical assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the state made a decision a number of years ago to switch to a managed care model. So prior to that, there was an aging population that was not eligible to receive cognitive rehabilitation therapy because they had their own separate waiver for anyone over the age of 60. But unfortunately, that waiver, which was actually called the aging waiver, did not have cognitive rehab therapy as a service.
Mm-hmm.
So when managed care took over in the state, which I believe was 2018, one of the major changes is that they took all of these waiver programs and combined them into one giant program called Community Health Choices. And one of the big changes with that was that the aging population over 60 were for the first time eligible to receive cognitive rehabilitation therapy. So this was game changing at that time because it was really the first opportunity that we had to work with individuals that might have Alzheimer's or a stroke patient that was 80 years old or someone that had dementia. And I was chosen as someone to head our aging population program that was really
Mm-hmm.
focused on getting services to this underserved population. And one of the outcomes of me being involved is that I went through a certification to become a dementia practitioner. So I can't really speak to what someone outside of my role would use it for. I can only tell you that it helped me understand that population better as we slowly but surely started to see more referrals come in for individuals that were over 60 years old.
Interesting. So did you discover that there were more people with dementia than you thought?
I don't know if I would say it was specifically people with dementia. I would say that there was a belief, and it was very quickly verified, that there was a huge population of folks over 60 that had cognitive dysfunction from whatever their diagnosis. So it could have been stroke, dementia, Alzheimer's, old traumatic brain injury, whatever it was. There was a huge population out there that needed cognitive rehabilitation therapy. So I wouldn't say it was specific to dementia. That was certainly one of the causes, but in general, it just opened us up to a new population of folks that may need cognitive rehab therapy because they have cognitive deficits.
Interesting. Okay. So I know that you're part of different groups, including the TBI advisory board. Why do you spend so much time doing this extra stuff?
It's a good question. I think the best way of describing it is the brain injury community here in PA, and I suspect it's like this all over the place, really needs advocates. We did a lot of work years ago in the MS world, and because we received a couple grants through a local chapter of the MS Society. And one thing that boggled my mind when I was involved in that, because I was running that program here at Neurorestorative as well, was the amount of money that was out there for MS. And it was simple. It was because there's MS drugs that are out there that can help people that have certain types of MS live pretty regular lives. But in the brain injury world, there's not a lot of money out there. There's not a lot of folks out there clamoring to do studies on brain injury. And what we see over and over and over again, and as I said, this is my 23rd year of being here at Neurorestorative, is that it's always a challenge finding the funding for folks to receive services like cognitive rehab therapy. I think it's important to mention that here in Pennsylvania, cognitive rehab is not a covered service. So residential habilitation, cognitive rehab, these are not services that are typically going to get paid for through Medicare or through private insurance. So you need to continue to advocate for this population to make sure that there's funding available. So these groups that I'm a part of, like the TBI Advisory Board, which is a great group. It's kind of a combination of state representatives, other providers, advocacy groups, and most importantly, survivors and survivor family members, is just making sure that the brain injury group here is doing everything that we can to advocate for the population, making sure that funding isn't taking away, making sure that the funders understand the services that they're supposed to be paying for, which continues to be an issue. So groups like the TBI Advisory Board meeting, that group, we meet just to go through stuff like that and make sure that we're doing everything we can to advocate for this population.
So say I'm a survivor, how do I do a little bit to advocate?
I think there's a lot of ways that you can advocate. I think it was a lot harder during COVID, but with things opening back up, you saw firsthand, Marcia, what the BIAPA conference here in PA was like, 230 some people gathering to talk about important topics, going around and networking, coming up with ideas for funders, coming up with ideas for rallies. We have a Capitol Day here in Pennsylvania every year where the Brain Injury Coalition gathers, going to your local legislature and talking to them about brain injury and, you know, the challenges that folks with traumatic brain injury have or an acquired brain injury have, and just getting the word out there. You know, we do the rallies at the Capitol. We go and meet with legislators. Over the years, I've met with several legislators to talk to them about, hey, you know, there's a bill coming up that you're going to be voting on, and this is important for you to understand what this bill is about. You know, this means that if this vote gets stricken down, we're going to end up losing, you know, $1 million to help fund a program for folks with traumatic brain injury. Those are important things to have discussions with. So I would say the everyday person, the survivor, the family member is talk to your local legislature about, you know, the brain injury world, what's out there, what are the challenges.
Yep.
And become involved. I really think you just need to be involved. There's support groups. I can only talk in Pennsylvania, and I would say, from what I understand, Pennsylvania is pretty good compared to the other states when it comes to services and supports for the brain injury world. But, you know, here in PA, every single county, I believe, has some type of brain injury support group. You know, even as simply as making sure that that support group continues to stay up and running to help families and survivors is important.
Yep. Okay. So